With just a 3% chance, the Atlanta Hawks won the 2024 NBA Draft Lottery and now have the top spot in one of the more interesting classes we've seen, and also have the opportunity to do a number of things outside of the first pick this offseason with that as an added piece. I'll be making the choices in this mock, factoring in both the best players on my personal board, but also accounting for team needs and fit and situation. A lot of these are tough enough that I might go in a different direction if I did another mock tomorrow, but this is where we're at. With that being said, Atlanta is on the clock, and they take French big man Alex Sarr with the first pick. Sarr has been my number one prospect for the majority of the year as a mobile big man who can defend in multiple spots, protect the rim, and has the upside to finish plays and shoot offensively. Though he is still raw on that end, I think he has the best combination of tools and impact, and he also fits this Hawks roster quite well, whether that means continuing to build around Trey or DeJounte, or just in his pairing with Jalen Johnson in the front court. It's a pretty good situation for him to end up. The Washington Wizards have the second pick, and they take Ignite wing Ron Holland. He's a high motor wing that operates as a slasher offensively and can defend in multiple spots. And despite the program struggling, he produced and showed promise in several areas this year. There are a lot of directions the Wizards could go in here, and I considered pretty much everything, but Holland is the best player available on my board, and though it's not as popular a pick in the consensus, I like what he'd bring to this group that doesn't have much to factor in long term besides Bilal Coulibaly. With the third pick, the Houston Rockets take Kentucky guard Reed Sheppard. He's a knockdown shooter and heady playmaker with the ability to make plays on the defensive end, and his long-term synergy with guys like Amin Thompson, Alperen Sengun should all be something that leads to a lot of wins. I heavily debated this pick, but I have a little more confidence in Reed's ability to survive defensively and just run the show as a playmaker. I think that he'd immediately help this team in a couple different ways. The Spurs take the other Kentucky guard off the board in Rob Dillingham. Rob is likely the most dynamic offensive talent in this draft, both on the ball and off the ball, as one of the most underrated guys there to me. He'd bring a much needed element to this Spurs group looking to take strides forward and build around Victor Wembanyama. Rob's talents and their structure could be the perfect storm for him to max out as a player. Now, I do think it would be a viable strategy to bet on the succeeding teams to pass on him and try to get Rob at 8, but because it's just me drafting for every team, that feels like it's a little fabricated. So he goes to the Spurs at 4. Unfortunately for Pistons fans, they got the 5th pick for the 3rd straight time, but I think they can still succeed here, and they take Zachary Rieseshay. He's in relatively the same tier as the other options left, but I'm drawn to his ability as a shooter for a Detroit team that needs it badly. He hasn't looked as great in recent months as he did earlier in the season, but I still think he has appeal as a 3-and-D wing who moves well and someone that can come in and make an impact now and be a piece that you build with in the future as you make progress towards something positive. The Charlotte Hornets pick UConn's Stephon Castle at 6. He's got a strong base as a point of attack defender and playmaker with good size, but questions about his shot and ability to create still loom. I know he's been on record saying that he's only a point guard, but unless it's Washington, I just don't see where he's going to be able to do that. I still like him quite a bit as a prospect, and if I'm Charlotte, he'd be in my top 2 targets, and the idea of a LaMelo, Castle, Brandon Miller trio is very intriguing to me. At 7, the Blazers take Ignite wing Modest Buzelis. At 6'9", he has a lot of upside as a connective piece, as someone that can make a play in a few ways and provide some help side rim protection. He'll need to develop as a shooter and continue making great progress physically, but he's well in the mix for best talent available here and makes a lot of sense for this Portland group going forward. With the 8th pick, the Spurs are back up and they take Nikola Topic. Now, even after taking Dillingham at 4, Topic's playmaking talent at his size makes the most sense to me here, and you kind of have to take him just from a talent perspective. I can almost guarantee you this scenario won't happen, and is why that wing first strategy could be a worthy one, but if it did, Rob is malleable enough offensively to make it work in the short term, and you get 2 chances at a building block creator and 2 potential top 5 talents, so that's the selection. The Grizzlies get their guy at number 9 in Donovan Clingan. He's got the potential to be one of the most productive players in the class as a big-time rim protector with elite size, and was heavily considered in many other spots in this lottery. But next to Jaren Jackson in the front court and their obvious stars in the backcourt, I think he could really shine and maybe even outperform expectations in that role. Utah goes with Cody Williams at 10. Williams is a lanky wing with upside as a slasher, connected playmaker, and defender, but it's all very much a work in progress at the moment. There are better bets to make an immediate contribution, and developing physically is going to be a huge part of his future success, but I like what he can do on this Jazz team that has some other intriguing young talent. At 11, the Chicago Bulls take Tennessee wing Dalton Knecht. While he is an older player, he's also one of the class's best shooters and scorers and one of the best bets to contribute early. I would have blown this iteration of the team up a long time ago, so I wouldn't too much account for what they have going on right now, but even with some of the questions that he has defensively, I'm pretty confident he'll carve out a real NBA role, and that's what you want most in this range. With the 12th pick, OKC takes Duke big man Kyle Filipowski. As a 7-footer, Flip brings some much needed value in the front court as a skilled big who should space the floor and made improvements in his execution and movement defensively. Now they are in position to potentially use this pick and others to make a run at a star this summer, but if they do keep the pick, Flip is someone I think does enough all around to fit them and contribute fairly early in his career. The Sacramento Kings take Providence's Devin Carter at 13. Carter is a tenacious defender, one of the draft's best athletes, and what should be a solid secondary scorer next to the likes of Fox and Sabonis. With or without Malik Monk in the fold, I think Carter's defense will be a much needed addition, and though I'm sure Kings fans are tired of picking guards, I think he's got some real versatility and could pay off big time. And with the last pick in the lottery, the Blazers take French wing Tijan Salon. He's a big upside swing who has moments in the same game of both looking like a top 10 talent and others being years away from contributing, but his level of size, athletic tools, and upside as both a shot maker and defender make him someone worth taking a risk on if you're Portland. At 15, the Miami Heat take USC guard Isaiah Collier. At around 6'3", 200 plus, he's one of the most talented drivers and lead playmakers in the class, and despite real questions in his shooting, his ability to play off the ball, and defensive effort, Miami is a spot that he could really shine and give the Heat a dynamic that they've been missing. Jared McCain is the pick for Philly at 16. I like what he brings as a three-point shooter, secondary playmaker, and solid defender, and think he'd bring a steadiness to their backcourt rotation for years to come. He's the type of player I think is going to figure it out wherever he lands, and he should complement this team's stars pretty well. The Pelicans will most likely defer the pick swap to next year, so the Lakers take Cal's Jalen Tyson at 17. Tyson may be one of the more underrated prospects in the class as a three-tool threat offensively, being able to dribble, pass, and shoot, and he's also defended well in previous situations. Now there are some questions in his off-ball ability, but I like what he brings, and he could be very useful for this Lakers bench. Orlando takes Bub Carrington at 18. Even with his midseason slump and other major questions that are there, I've grown to be back in on Bub as of late. He's a big-time shot maker with good size, and he's been a capable passer and defender as well. They need shooting and shot making, and whether it's through the draft or free agency or a trade, Bub is one of my main targets for them. Toronto picks Ignite forward Tyler Smith at 19. He's a knockdown shooter at 6'10 and a smooth finisher around the rim. Now he did have some issues defensively that he'll need to work through and find his footing, but he was Ignite's most efficient and consistent producer in his role as a floor spacer, and I think he'd work well with this current group. Cleveland takes Colorado wing Tristan da Silva at 20. He's a complimentary guy at 6'9 who can knock down shots, make a play, and should be solid defensively. There are some athletic and matchup questions still there for him, but this is one of my favorite landing spots for him, and I think he could contend for an all-rookie team if he ends up here. Kel'el Ware goes to New Orleans at 21. Ware was one of the biggest winners of the Combine, testing extremely well for a legit 7-footer. He's still got looming questions about his motor and applying the tools in a game setting, but I consider him as high as the lottery as a rim running big with the potential to stretch the floor in time, and think he'd at least be a good option in likely moving on from Jonas Valanciunas. Zach Edey is the pick for Phoenix at 22. He's maybe the most polarizing player in the draft and maybe in the last couple years, but his sheer size and productivity has made me a much bigger believer than I was earlier in the season. I still have some major questions in his ability to survive defensively no matter how he tested on the agility drills, but his sheer size and screening ability should make this star-laden team even tougher to deal with offensively. Milwaukee takes Jacoby Walter with the 23rd pick. He's one of the class's better shooters, especially off movement, and has some ability to score off the bounce. I'm a little lower on his defense, which is why he falls lower than he's often mocked, but this will be a great situation for him to make an impact on a winning team that was asking any and everyone to play last season. The Knicks have back-to-back picks here, and they take Baylor big man Yves Missi with the first. He has all the tools to be a positive rim protector and good pick-and-roll defender and operate as a play finisher on the offensive end. And with the Knicks likely losing one of Hartenstein or Robinson this offseason, I like going for another 5 that fits that mold for them. And then with the second pick, they take French wing Pacom Dadier. I like his energy, his defensive tools, and upside as a shot maker, and think he could be a real difference maker in time. So they swing on his upside here and look to develop him in the long term as they continue to try to contend at the top of the East over the next few seasons. DaRon Holmes is the pick for the Wizards at 26. Holmes is a versatile big with great potential as a play finisher, rim protector, and has added to his game as a floor spacer in a real way. I still have questions in whether or not he can handle full-time minutes at the 5 physically, but he's too talented to land much further than this and would likely get a lot of early reps here and probably exceed some early expectations. At 27, the Timberwolves take Nikola Jurisic. He was one of the biggest winners at the Combine, showing what he could do as a big wing that can make a play, move without the ball, and was passable defensively. The shot was also working as it has been over the last part of the season, and if he can continue to show that to be the case, he'll have a ton of suitors even higher than this, but here he lands in Minnesota. Denver takes Virginia's Ryan Dunn at 28. If I'm Denver, I'm really just looking for elite skills to put around Jokic, and Dunn's defense, athleticism, and size to play the 4 really intrigue me for this group. Sure, the shot is going to need a ton of work, but as an understudy to Aaron Gordon, we could be asking how the rest of the league let this happen. Utah selects Johnny Furphy with their second first rounder, and I like his upside as a cutter, rebounder, and shooter on the wing. He does have some work to do defensively and just making plays with the ball that could lead him to go back to Kansas, but he fit in nicely with this group if he ultimately decides to stay. And with the last pick in the first round, the Boston Celtics take Bobby Klintman. Klintman is an intriguing option as a big wing who has shown promise on both ends of the floor. I think a team like Boston could be patient with him and add to their versatility, looking to extend this window as long as possible. They'll have an endless amount of options here, including trading for a few second round picks again like they did last year, but they take Bobby to end the first round and what will end up being the first night of this draft. Keeping it more brief in the second round, the Toronto Raptors take Miami wing Keyshawn George at 31. He's got good size, he can really shoot it, he can pass, and was solid defensively down the stretch. Now he is a below average athlete and a very limited driver, but as he develops physically, I think he could be a positive piece around this Raptors core, and I like his long-term upside. With 32, the Jazz take Marquette point guard Tyler Kolek. He's currently as good a passer and pick and roll operator as you'll find in this class, and he's also an elite competitor. He should have a lot of teams interested in the 20s and 30s, and with the Jazz still searching for a table setter, Kolek makes a lot of sense even if it's in a backup role long term. Milwaukee picks Kevin McCullough at 33. The injuries and questions about the shot still loom for him, but I like the value here as a potential rotation wing that defends first and foremost and is good enough in other spots to find a niche, especially for this Milwaukee team that has real championship aspirations. Baylor Scheierman was one of the best players during the Combine scrimmages, showing off his game as a knockdown shooter and capable playmaker. He held up defensively as well, and I'd be surprised if he was selected too much lower than to the Blazers here at 34. The Spurs take Alex Karaban at 35. He has good size, he can shoot it, he knows where to be on both ends. He's a proven winner with 2 national titles in college. Now he didn't test well athletically at the Combine, but the game sample size of productivity and all-around feel is about as good as it gets here, and he's someone I could see fitting in well to what the Spurs like to do. The Pacers pick up Weber State wing Dylan Jones. He's a very interesting player as a statistical outlier, but still sort of a tweener. I like what he showed defensively in the scrimmages, and if you can get him to do that and bring that more consistently and play his game in a role off the bench, I think he could find a way to contribute in the league. The Timberwolves take someone who might continue to rise on my personal board with Jamal Shead. He's a tremendous defensive prospect and playmaker, and it's enough for me to overlook some of his career inefficiencies and shooting struggles at his size. He's a dog, he can run a team, and he fits in perfectly with Minnesota's identity. The Knicks take UC Santa Barbara guard AJ Mitchell at 38. He proved he could hang with better athletes in competition at the combine and measured pretty well, and his defense and playmaking really popped in that setting. He's someone I'd consider as high as the late first, but he makes a good rotational bet for the Knicks and seems like someone Tibbs would be a real fan of. Memphis takes Colorado's KJ Simpson at 39. KJ's become one of my favorite prospects over the year, and despite his size, he just knows how to play in every way. I think he could run second units well for Memphis and give them another source of playmaking on this young, talented roster. The Blazers take Ulrich Chomche at 40. He's still super raw, but his athleticism, defensive versatility, and potential as a passer and shooter make him an intriguing long-term pick. He's the youngest player in the draft, and he very much looks like it a lot of the time that he's out there, but Portland I don't think would pass on the opportunity to see what he can ultimately become. Philly takes Florida State's Jameer Watkins at 41. He's a versatile wing defender who's a very good passer and is physical around the bucket. And the shot is still a work in progress, but I like what he brings defensively, and for a team looking to contend as soon as possible, I like bringing in someone like Jameer who could contribute fairly early. Charlotte goes with AJ Johnson at 42. He might have been the biggest winner from the combine and turned a lot of heads, showing off his playmaking and just the ability to hang with this level of competition given such a limited NBL sample size. I think he's going to be on a similar development timeline as like an Anthony Simons. Not that he'll ultimately get to that level as a player, but that's probably what he'll need to get up to speed. And Charlotte takes a swing on his upside here. Miami picks Oso Ighodaro at 43. I feel like he's gotten a little bit underrated at this point, but a versatile defensive big who can pass as well as he can and also finish at the rim is always going to have value somewhere, and I think he'd be really useful as a backup to Bam Adebayo. Houston takes UCLA big man Adem Bona. Bona profiles very well as an energy big, and though he's not the tallest, he has a great wingspan. He's strong, and in a simplified role with plus playmakers, I think he can make an impact with his defensive versatility and athleticism. UNC's Harrison Ingram is the pick for Sacramento. He is a bit of a tweener, but I like the idea of getting a multi-position wing who can do a little of everything with this group. Minnesota's Cam Christie goes to LA at 46. I love Christie's game as a sharpshooting two guard, and though he has the option to return to school and that might be a good idea for him, I think he'd be a good long-term play here for the Clippers. Orlando takes Hunter Salas at 47 as a shooting and scoring bet in their backcourt. The Spurs take one of my favorites in Jonathan Mogbo at 48. I love his defensive versatility, athleticism, and playmaking at the forward spot, and though he doesn't have the clearest offensive role at his size, he could make some real money in the league in that Jared Vanderbilt mold, and especially in a situation like San Antonio. The Indiana Pacers have 3 seconds, so I doubt they keep all of them, but they go with Pelle Larsson and Justin Edwards here, who could be really good value at this point in the draft. DC goes with Melvin Nginsa at 51. He's got the French connection with Bilal Coulibaly, and just from a talent perspective, is possibly a little bit underdrafted here, but a swingman that I like nonetheless. Nick Clifford is the pick for the Warriors here. I really like his game as a 6'5" physical wing that can both shoot and defend, and he could be a very good value pick for Golden State. Tyon Grant Foster goes to Detroit at 53. An athletic scoring wing like him who had a lot of defensive flashes should be considered throughout the second round. The Celtics pick Ignites Ethan Almansa at 54. He's got a wide draft range at this point, but he's shown more than enough promise to bring into this Boston frontcourt and hopefully learn from them to potentially contribute down the line. Jalen Bridges is the pick for the Lakers at 55, bringing in a great skill set as a 3-and-D wing. Denver goes with Trenton Flowers at 56, fresh off of a good performance at the Combine. Memphis takes Louisiana Tech's Isaiah Crawford at 57, who is somebody I'm sure has a lot of fans in that organization. And then the Mavs finish it off by taking Arizona wing Keyshawn Johnson at 58. Here's a look back at the entire mock draft. The returnees will be the big story over the next couple weeks, as there were a lot of players here that I wish I could have picked, but in reality, if they were to stay in it, they would get priority 2 ways as the draft ended, and we'll talk about them a little bit more in detail in the future big boards. But that's gonna do it for this video. If you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and leave a comment down below of who you want your favorite team to target on our 2 draft nights this year. As always, I'm Keandre, this is HoopIntellect. Until next time, I'm out.